Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Meghan Grebner with us as always to talk all things markets. University of Missouri, Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Megan.
Happy Friday the 13th to you.
Hopefully we get through this with no big problems, right?
That and also no ladders, I can't say no black cats. I have one upstairs. So hopefully all good omens today on this Friday. All right, we're going to talk supply and demand. It was the big January report. There's been a lot going on with that this week. We'll talk some retail prices and consumer sentiment. But to kick things off, let's recap what happened this week in the markets.
Yeah, so on fed cattle this week, we were down 26 cents, Megan. Those feeder cattle markets, it's been a while since you and I have been able to report, but we're going to call them steady to $4 lower. On the future side, the February live cattle futures contract was up $1.10. But the March feeder cattle contract was actually down $2.80. We saw corn up this week with the March contract up 22.5 cents. Box beef prices were lower this week, down $2.15. Ribs really were the big driver of that lower box beef price this week. On the hog side, cash barrels and gilts went lower this week, down $3.30. Futures were also lower with the February lean hog futures contract down $2 and a nickel. We also lost on the pork cutout value this week, down nearly $3.50.
Gosh, it's really, especially on the hog side of things, it's been a sluggish start. We were slow going into the holidays, and it has not resumed the momentum we had going into those last couple of weeks of the year.
Yeah, that's right. You know, when you look at pork cutout value in particular here. So last year at this time, we were at 87.37. Today we're sitting here at 81.56. That's not really what we want to see as we get in here to 2023. So I hope this is not a longer term trend, but certainly not great news.
Does that, knowing what price, like thinking about that pork cutout value, does it help make pork maybe a better buy at the grocery store or give it some value at the grocery store? And can we maybe see some increase or uptick because of an increase in demand?
So perhaps, and I think this is, so I've kind of been down the road for a while of there's a lot less substitution between these meats, but at some point I think they get cheap enough that they're substitutes. So maybe that's the case. I'm not sure the hog industry is going to be excited about that being the case, but again, something that we'll watch, especially I think you and I both are already thinking ahead of, we're going to have high beef prices. So do we see some of that switch away from beef to some pork products?
All right, let's talk slaughter numbers. Recap what happened this week in terms of beef and hog slaughter.
Yeah, cattle slaughter this week for the week ending January 14th, 661,000 head of cattle. That's 98,000 head more than we did last week and 43,000 more than we did a year ago at this time. So a stronger run on hogs as well, 2.688 million head of hogs to be slaughtered this week. That's up 392,000 head from a week ago and 321,000 head from a year ago. So stronger numbers out of the gate this week for both cattle and hogs.
Definitely have been some big runs this week, especially at the end of the week as well. Big report this week, Scott. USDA's January supply and demand numbers came out. We've seen some support on the corn side of things. It's been interesting looking if we're going to talk inputs, which we're really not going to get into today, but some adjustments on the beef and pork side of things too.
Yeah, that's right. When you look at what USDA did in the January WASDE relative to December, few things stick out to me. Number one, on the production side, beef production increased 170 million pounds in January relative to December. Pork production raised 135 million pounds. I don't want to get overly excited about that, but more production relative to less is always one we want to watch from a price standpoint. Although USDA did raise production, they've been chasing generally prices higher. Fed cattle, they raised $2.50 this month relative to December. They also raised barrels and gilts by $1 this month's report and raised turkeys by $7. It's only chicken that they actually moved lower, down $2.50 relative to the December report.
I don't know if you've seen some of the social media going around. Everybody's talking about the price of eggs. How much are we watching high path avian influenza as we get into this new year, and what it does to egg prices, what it does to turkey prices, and chicken prices as well?
Yeah, so for sure, that's the issue, and I'll say a couple of. So I'll be an economist for just one brief second and say I think egg demand is fairly inelastic. So even though you run prices higher, there's not a lot of great substitutes for eggs. So I think that demand being so inelastic push prices higher as well. But yes, you hit the nail on the head. Most recent egg production report from November would suggest, a 5-6% cut in production relative to 2021. That has a lot to do with just some of the record egg prices. Now we're talking about these very high egg prices. I've seen just a little bit of data out of USDA to me that might suggest we've maybe peaked, and we'll see as we go through the rest of this month whether we get some reprieve with some lower, still high though, egg prices.
Well, let's hope, because the Easter Bunny is just around the corner.
That's right. So point being, demand's going to be strong, right? So we'll have to pay attention here.
All right, let's talk. Speaking of retail prices, that report also came out this week. As we take a look at beef and pork prices on the retail side of things, how are things looking?
Yeah, so we see what's a little bit of a mixed bag when we look at the December numbers we got out. So the choice retail beef price for December, $7.45 a pound. That was actually 9 cents above where we were in November. But is 21 cents below where we were a year ago. Now, a little bit of reference here. You go back to December of 2019, and we were $1.36 higher this last December relative to where we were in December of 2019. On the pork side, the retail pork price, $4.83 for December of 2022. That was actually 12 cents lower than it was in November. But on the pork side, 9 cents higher than December of 2021. So a little bit of mix, I'll say. I think there's maybe a little bit of thought that consumers are beginning to slow purchases or slow demand a little bit of beef and pork products.
When we take a look at that retail side of things, Scott, we talk about the choice retail beef price, right? And I was just having this conversation with somebody this week talking about high quality meats in comparison to purchases of hamburger and those types of items in the meat case as well. How is that how does that continue to play out in terms of demand and what we're seeing?
Yeah, so I think you can find a little bit of anecdotal here of some of the higher priced beef cuts that fell during 2022. Yet things like ground beef actually rose during the period. To me, that's some buying down that I think is probably happening. Now I'll say, I think there's this concern that as the general economy slows, as we see higher interest rates kind of slow down consumer demand, that has impacts. But I'll say for that highest quality beef, the steaks that are going to the very highest end restaurants, I don't think we're seeing a lot of decline in prices there, because I don't think consumers that are in that high end or high income bracket, if you will, have seen a lot of impacts from some of the higher interest rates that we see today.
Scott, as we wrap up, consumer sentiment also out this week. And while maybe not where we once were, we are definitely starting to see some uptick in improvement.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe this is a little bit of silver lining. The January index of consumer sentiment was up 8.2% relative to where it was in December. So much higher than kind of the December, where I think, higher rates again were dragging on us pretty hard. So a little bit of bounce back here. Now, I will say that's still 3.9% below where we were in January of 2022. So we got work left to do, but it's nice to see some positive. Maybe most impressive out of that is when you look at the components of that overall consumer sentiment index, the current economic conditions portion of that index was up 15.5% in January relative to December. So pretty strong current situation, maybe suggesting some of the lower fuel prices that we're seeing are being helpful in terms of that consumer sentiment. And maybe consumers are beginning to think this rapid inflation that we've seen for a period of time will continue to adjust lower as we look ahead.
Here's hoping that consumer sentiment continues to improve and demand for both beef and pork holds on, because that's going to be crucial to the price factor moving forward.
Yeah, so I will say 2022 was not a bad year from a demand standpoint overall when you look across the entire year, and we need that to continue. If we talk about contraction, I think we certainly talk about a different situation as we look ahead.
Scott, always great to see you. It was great to see you in person last weekend as well. As we look ahead to next week, a couple of big, more substantial reports for us to dissect.
Yeah, that's right. We get livestock slaughter next week, Megan, and we finish the week with cattle on feed. We're going to really start getting focused on what's the beef cow herd as that report gets to us here at the end of the month. But seeing what cattle placements look like will certainly be a piece of that puzzle.
I definitely look forward to that cattle inventory report coming out at the end of the month. And it's perfect timing too, because it's right ahead of National Cattlemen's meeting down in New Orleans. So will be some great topics then.
Yeah, we certainly may rival our 2014 low we saw. So we'll see what we get out of the report, Megan.
It'll be a great weekend for a weekly livestock market update for sure. Scott, always great to see you.
Hey, have a good weekend.
You too. To have our weekly livestock market update delivered to your email box every Saturday morning, go to brownfieldagnews.com. You can also submit questions and comments there, and to get our daily rundown of what happens in the market, make sure to check out John Perkins' Market Minute. Have a great weekend. I'm Meghan Grebner for Brownfield.